The class fee was missing. And the teacher took me to check the surveillance. We saw a couple in the classroom, kissing passionately. The boy was Hank, my childhood friend who had confessed his love to me just the day before. The girl was Summer, someone he had always looked down upon. When the disappearance of the class fee was first discovered, the class monitor immediately insisted that I was the one who took it and wanted to search me. I saw her giving a triumphant glance to Summer not far away. And I understood what was going on. This was probably related to Hank. As everyone knew, Summer liked Hank, but Hank had always been cold towards her. When Hank made a grand confession to me yesterday, I saw Summer in the crowd, her face pale, with tears in her eyes, looking at Hank with a touch of sadness. This made Hank stutter through his confession. Fortunately, having fulfilled my obsession, I finally took the bouquet of roses. Just as he was ecstatically spinning me around, Summer covered her face and ran away crying. She had always been on good terms with the class monitor. This scene today was probably to make me feel bad. I didn't take it. I stood up calmly. There's surveillance in the classroom, right? Checking it will make things clear. There's no need to argue. Hank's hand that was twirling the pen paused, and a hint of nervousness appeared on his face. He said slowly, "I don't think Renee did it. She's not that kind of person." Upon hearing this, Summer's eyes instantly turned red. She bit her lip and looked at Hank pitifully. He uncomfortably turned his head away, pretending not to see. The class monitor rolled her eyes and said loudly, "I think what Renee said makes sense. Although she was the only one who returned to the classroom during the PE break, I also think we shouldn't wrong our classmates. So we should check the surveillance to clear Renee's name." My intuition told me something was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. Suddenly, Hank stood up, kicked over the table, and roared, "Are you done? It's just the class fee. How much is it? Why be so persistent? I'll make up double the amount." I frowned. "Hank, what do you mean? I said I didn't take it. And you believe I didn't take it. Then why do you need to pay this money? Shouldn't the right thing be to find out where the real class fee is?" Hank turned to look at me, with a hint of grievance. "Renee, I just can't stand seeing you being wronged." "I'm not wronged." I looked back at him calmly. "If this matter isn't investigated clearly, then I'll really be wronged." Hank's expression changed several times. He gritted his teeth, glared at Summer fiercely, and threw out a "whatever." Then he turned and walked out of the classroom. When I saw the surveillance, I finally understood Summer's purpose. In the empty classroom, Hank pressed Summer against the wall, and the two were kissing passionately. The fragmented sunlight shone behind them. The handsome boy and the beautiful girl were intertwined, looking like a youth idol drama. "Renee. He said he was just playing with you." Summer said. "You didn't know, did you? We made a bet on how long it would take him to sleep with you. Otherwise, why do you think he confessed to you?" Summer stood behind me, her venomous eyes scanning me from head to toe, lingering especially on my chest. "With your flat chest?" I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to hold back, but I still couldn't help it. I turned around and slapped her across the face. Summer covered her face, looking at me in disbelief, trembling with anger. "How dare you hit me?" I ignored her and continued to check the surveillance. I hadn't forgotten that the purpose of checking the surveillance was to find the class fee, even though this was probably not Summer's purpose. "Do you know that Hank said he's been tired of you for a long time? He's seen you since you were a child. Holding your hand doesn't give him any physical reaction. It's like holding his left hand with his right hand." It was almost time for class to end and for students to pack up. "He said your bedroom has no taste at all. It's like a man's. Your underwear is thrown around casually, all of the cute type. It looks like a child's and it doesn't arouse any desire." The classmates went out for PE class. The first ones to leave were. "He also said he knew you've always liked him. When he celebrated your birthday at the age of 7, he forgot to buy a gift. He just picked up a plush toy from the roadside trash can and lied to you that he accidentally dropped it and got it dirty while holding it. You cherished it like a treasure, washed it clean, and put it by the bedside. You still sleep with it now." The last ones to go out were Summer and a class monitor. They took out the bag of Class V from their seats. And then, he said he hates the way you secretly look at him the most. That kind of love makes him creepy. Like a searchlight. Whenever he appears, your eyes follow him. Sometimes he thinks you're like a pervert, always paying attention to him. The Class V was found behind the trash can. I forced myself to turn off the surveillance and looked at Summer expressionlessly. Have you finished? Summer was stunned and took 2 steps back, covering her face and looking at me warily. I smiled slightly. I won't hit you again. It would dirty my hands. The Class V has been found. I'm going back first. Behind me Summer gritted her teeth and said, Renee. You'll regret this. I found the Class V behind the trash can, handed it to the teacher, and then asked for leave. I didn't want to face Hank. Summer's words were jumbled in my mind, spinning around repeatedly. If at first I didn't believe Hank would say such things about me, when she mentioned the plush toy, I suddenly believed it. Because just 2 days ago, my parents invited him to our house for dinner. He walked into my bedroom as if he was at home. I had just changed into a dress at that time and blushed, asking him to knock on the door in the future. He shrugged indifferently. Is there anything on you worth my looking at? Although I felt a bit uncomfortable, I just took it as a familiar joke. So it turned out that this was his true disgust. Later, he saw the teddy bear on the bed. In fact, most of the plush had almost fallen off, leaving only a bare body. Hank frowned, with a hint of disgust. You still keep it? I said in a low voice. After all, this is the first birthday gift you gave me. What I didn't say was that I wanted to cherish it. Hank was a bit touched. He suddenly hugged me. I'll give you a better one this year. Throw this one away later. The unique scent of Hank rushed towards me. In his arms, I heard my heart pounding like a drum. Summer was right. I had liked him for a long time. So when he confessed to me, I agreed without hesitation. It seemed that everyone in the world could see it. Then why couldn't Hank see it? Suddenly, the unique ringtone of Hank's phone rang. I picked it up, and a question came from the phone. Why did you push Summer down the stairs? When I rushed to the hospital, in front of Summer's hospital bed, her mother was comforting her. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over viciously, her finger almost poking my face. You're such a vicious child. You were jealous of our Summer and pushed her downstairs? I tell you, this matter won't end so easily. Summer was lying on the bed delicately, with a plaster cast on her right ankle. The look in her eyes when she looked at me was filled with triumphant light. She reached out and tugged at her mother, crying, Mom, honey, so my sashin. Don't say that. She didn't do it on purpose. Hank stood aside, looking disappointed. Renee, I didn't expect you to be such a person. Oh really? I calmly took out my phone and dialed 110. Hello. I want to report a case. Summer panicked and shouted, Renee. What are you doing? Calling the police. I shook my phone. Since you said I pushed you, don't you want justice? I forgive you. Summer bit her lip and cried pitifully. I know you've always minded that I'm close to Hank, and yesterday you saw the surveillance. You couldn't help it for a moment. A hint of panic and caution appeared on Hank's face. He walked over and wanted to hold my hand. Renee. I can explain. I took a step back, briefly told the police officer the situation, and then looked at Summer coldly. No need. I don't need your forgiveness because I didn't do this. Even if you want to let it go, I don't want to be wronged. As for you, I looked him up and down, not knowing how to scold him properly for a moment. Renee. Don't look at me like that. Hank couldn't stand it first. I really can explain. But I don't want to hear it. I raised my eyebrows at Summer. I accept the investigation results of the police officer. Summer. I believe the innocent will be cleared. Unfortunately, I spoke too soon this time. Summer dared to do that because she had confidence. The surveillance in the corridor was broken. The classroom surveillance could only prove that I walked out first. Summer chased after me. And the slap in the classroom proved that there was a conflict between me and Summer. This made me seem even more suspicious of pushing her downstairs. Even if I said it wasn't me, no one believed me. My parents were called to the office. After hearing what happened, my mother didn't even listen to my defense and slapped me. Can't you be more sensible? When will you get rid of those bad habits? My mother turned to Summer and apologized. I'm sorry. My child was raised in the countryside since childhood, so she's not well behaved. After all these years, she still has some minor problems. How much do you think we should compensate? My ears were buzzing. My mother was still chattering about my faults. Hank stood not far away. His lips moved, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he avoided my eyes when he met my gaze. Summer hopped over to me and whispered, "Renee, this is the consequence of offending me." In the midst of the commotion, I heard my own voice. I didn't push her. I stared stubbornly at my mother, hoping she would stand by my side, even just once. But she didn't. The evidence is conclusive. You're still arguing. She looked at me with disappointment. How many more lies do you need to tell before you stop? Is it that as long as others say I'm bad, you'll believe it? Are you that afraid that I'll surpass my younger brother? What are you talking about? My mother's face showed embarrassment as if her secret had been exposed. She suddenly started crying, covering her face. I brought you up with so much hardship. The office was surrounded by classmates, all with expressions of watching a show. I felt like I was in the middle of the crowd, like a clown performing the play they wanted to see. Okay. The dean came out to mediate. You're all classmates. Let's just let this matter go. Summer smiled slightly and said in a voice that was neither too loud nor too soft, "Mom, I never knew class matronee was so pitiful before. Let's forget it." My mother immediately looked up and smiled gratefully. "Thank you. This classmate is really kind-hearted and beautiful." When I walked out of the office, I looked at Hank in the crowd, asked softly, "Do you think it was me?" Hank lowered his eyes. "I don't know. People change." I nodded. He was right. People change. In the evening, I was reciting books at home when I received a message from Hank. "Come down." I pushed open the window. He was leaning against a tree, his head slightly lowered, and he seemed to be holding something in his hand. After thinking for a moment, I closed the window and blocked him on my blacklist. Outside the door, my parents were arguing fiercely about something. My younger brother pushed the door open and came in, holding a mobile phone in his hand. "Sis, Hank is looking for you." I took the phone and hung up the call, saying, "Hang up any calls for me from now on." My younger brother took the phone and asked in a low voice, "Sis, are you unhappy at home because of me?" I stroked his head. In fact, he didn't do anything wrong. On the contrary, he was very obedient. When I was a child, just after being brought back from the countryside, he was very hostile towards me and always targeted me. My mother's bad impression of me also took root deeply from that time. She thought I wanted to harm my younger brother and compete with him for attention. Later, when I started going to kindergarten, he gradually changed. He would save his delicious food for me. When going out with our parents, if I didn't go, he wouldn't go either. Maybe he still remembered what happened before and knew that I didn't like him. So he always huddled in the corner and secretly watched me. I still remember once when our parents were not at home. I took him out for a meal. He held my hand tightly. When eating a hamburger, he lowered his head and said, "Sorry." At that moment, I knew he had actually remembered these things for a long time. So I forgave him. "It's not your fault." I rubbed his head. "Don't think too much. Sis, I went out alongside. Did Hank bully you?" He clenched his fists. "I'll beat him up for you." I was amused and nodded. "He's blind. Ignore him from now on. I'm not friends with him anymore." "Sis, don't be sad. You're so nice. You'll meet a better man in the future." I smiled softly. It seemed that everyone knew I liked him. Yet he still postponed his confession until now. Maybe it was really like what Summer said. This was just a game they played together. The next day, as soon as I walked into the classroom, Hank blocked my way. His face didn't look good. "Why didn't you come down yesterday and even blocked me? What's the matter?" He seemed to be stabbed by my indifference. He grabbed my arm viciously. You haven't apologized to Summer yet. I tried to break free from him. Hank. Are you crazy? I said I didn't push her. The police have confirmed it. Some people just won't admit it. The class monitor stood aside, folding his arms and sneering. She just refuses to repent. Even her mother said what kind of person she is. The classmates gathered around and started talking noisily. Their eyes looking at me were filled with condemnation. Renee. I didn't expect you to be so vicious. What's unexpected? She probably knew that Hank's confession to her was just part of a game with Summer. Her long-cherished dream has come to nothing. So of course she would do something evil. You don't think Hank will like you because of this, do you? Renee. You're so disgusting. You're like those vicious female supporting characters in novels, who can't get the one they love. It was as if thousands of voices were scolding me in my ears. And countless insults were piercing into my ears and penetrating my soul. The voice that had been struggling and saying, I didn't, gradually became weaker and weaker. What was the point? I thought. My life was a joke. An ill-timed appearance. My silence intensified their emotions. It wasn't until the head teacher's class bell rang that I finally got some peace. The college entrance examination is coming soon. I hope everyone can focus on their studies. Some people. If you do bad things, don't drag others down. I suddenly looked up, my lips moving. But the moment I met the head teacher's eyes, I slowly lowered my head and smiled self-deprecatingly. From that day on, I endured the bullying from my classmates. My books disappeared. My desk was filled with scribbles. Garbage was always thrown under my chair. Even dirty marks often appeared on my chair, and sometimes they couldn't be wiped off. Once, when I was trying to clean it, Hank walked by me. Renee. You have to pay the price for doing something wrong. Apologize to Summer. And then we'll let you go. I ignored him as if I didn't hear. All this reached its peak after Summer was discharged from the hospital and returned to school. She was clearly fine. But she would pretend that her foot hurt and order me to do this and that. She claimed it was giving me a chance to atone for my sins. If I didn't agree, she would pile up tears and pull Hank's sleeve, crying, Hank. It hurts. Hank looked at me, grinned, walked up, and kicked me in the leg. The pain made me kneel down. He said casually, if you don't want to work, then kneel down and atone for Summer's sins. Every time I got up, he would kick me again. I got up again. And he kicked me again. In the end, his leg was slightly trembling. But I still stubbornly stood up and stared at him closely. Hank. Either kick me to death today, or I will never bow my head to her. Hank's eyes were filled with disbelief. Some classmates were scared and tugged at his clothes. Forget it. He seemed to have found a way out and said with a pretense of ease. Since someone is pleading for you, I'll let you go this time. I laughed coldly. I don't care. Hank. You seem to have forgotten one thing. I looked at him calmly and said word by word. Let's break up. From now on. There's nothing between us anymore. He suddenly stood up. His eyes blood red. Staring at me with gritted teeth. Renee. Say that again if you have the guts. Is it that hard to understand? I endured the pain and stood where I was. Anyway. It's just a game. In all these days. Did you ever think of me as your girlfriend again? I don't agree. He gritted his teeth, looking really angry. I thought it was absurd. All of this was absurd. Why? He stammered and couldn't say a word. Finally he said. Anyway, heading fulfilled why I'm sorry. I don't agree. I laughed softly. Hank. You're so disgusting. I even felt disgusted that I had liked you. Summer's face didn't look good. She tugged at Hank. Hank. What do you mean? Isn't it just a game? Are you reluctant? None of your business. He pushed Summer away irritably. Summer let out a scream and fell to the ground. Hank panicked and went to help her. Taking advantage of their chaos, I grabbed my school bag and slipped away quietly. My leg still hurt a lot. I walked slowly, limping, lep on a low sorry. But I was determined. What had happened during this period was like a dream. Hank. Why did you become like this? I didn't understand. Obviously, having Facile Wyansai. He was very nice to me before. We met in the park. When I first came to this city, it was strange and cold. When I was wronged, I had nowhere to go and could only find a place to vent in the nearby park. Most of the time, I walked aimlessly, having fulfilled my desire, digesting my pain alone. Only once, when I was doing my homework, my younger brother fell off the bed. My parents beat me without asking any questions. Believing that I didn't take good care of him, I ran to the park and cried, disturbing Hank, who was sleeping nearby. He was always flamboyant, with a head of red hair. Wherever he walked, he was flamboyant and dazzling. His family was rich, and he was an only child. He didn't understand my pain. Nor could he understand that some parents would treat their biological daughter like this. But he respected me. He didn't ask me to always understand my parents, always forgive them, or always be nice to my younger brother. He just took me to play. Playing with water skimming, playing basketball, going to the esports city. Once, in order to distract me, he even took me to play a script-killing game. Focusing on reasoning made me forget about time and pain, and only remember being with him. He pulled me out of the abyss, but I didn't understand why he so easily pushed me back in. I gave him time. When he humiliated me for the first time, I didn't break up with him. I even tacitly regarded myself as his girlfriend because this identity made me secretly happy. How could one not love their own light? My long and dark life had joy because of him. But now, the light went out. I walked into the police station with evidence. The police officer who received me was the same police brother as last time. He said his name was Leo. I bought a pendant for my school bag, and Hank didn't notice it. That pendant was a miniature camera. I couldn't do anything about those small-scale malicious acts. After all, you can't go to the police station and tell the police that my classmate called me a bitch. So arrest them. Bullying doesn't only have one form of expression. Those words and actions hidden around us, sometimes every move, are all forms of bullying. But I couldn't do anything about those. But today, they went too far. The video clearly recorded the process of me being kicked to the ground. Again and again. Leo's face was solemn. The sister next to him clenched her fists tightly, making a creaking sound. She comforted me. Don't worry. We will definitely not let them go. Thank you. You should go to the hospital first now. Leo frowned, stood up, and picked up the keys. I'll take you there. His tone was unrejectable. In the car, he looked focused, but his brows were always furrowed. Renee, all these will pass. Your current goal is the college entrance examination. You know? I know. I looked at the scenery outside the window. This place is like a quagmire. Only by getting out of it can there be hope. By the way, do you want to hear some good news? Leo suddenly smiled. There's some progress in the last case. I went back and investigated several times. Although there was no surveillance on that step, there was a car parked downstairs near the west side. The car had a dash cam. Maybe we can find some evidence. Thanks a lot. This was really great news for me. After coming out of the hospital, the doctor said fortunately, the bones weren't injured. I just needed to rest and recuperate. Unfortunately, heading fulfilledly, it was only a minor injury. Minor and slight injuries couldn't be used to convict anyone. Finally, heading fulfilled my I'm sorry. At Leo's strong request, I chose to rest in a wheelchair. I just looked a bit miserable. I looked just like Summer. Leo sent me to my doorstep and then left, taking a deep breath. I pushed open the door. It was quiet, as usual, with no one there. My parents both worked in the factory. My younger brother would go to the factory to a dinner with them after school. As for me, I always had to take care of myself. Originally, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. I had to cook for my younger brother. But after I deliberately put too much salt and chili, and made the dishes a mess, they gave up. They knew I did it on purpose. But they still didn't want to bet on their biological son's health. But today, in my situation, I could only find a pack of instant noodles from the cabinet to fill my stomach. Suddenly, the door was pounded loudly, accompanied by Hank's drunken voice. Renee, come out. Separated by a door, I said calmly. You're drunk. Go back. I won't. He seemed to be lying on the door, slapping it hard. Come out and make things clear to me. What else was there to say? You said we should break up, but I don't agree. Hank. Aren't you despicable? I retorted calmly. Don't you think that after treating me like this, I'd still like you? There was silence on the other side of the door. But soon, let out a low sigh. He became even more frantic. Why not? Haven't you always liked me? I bullied you because you did something wrong. People should be punished for their mistakes. Right? Why do you want to break up with me? I haven't even agreed yet. A ridiculous thought came to me. Hank. Don't tell me you actually like me? Is that not okay? I almost burst out laughing. Your so-called like means believing me without any reason. First looking down on Summer and saying in front of me that she's just a girl chasing after you. Then starting to protect her. And then bullying me? Hank, are you insane? I can explain. Fine, run out a low sigh. Go ahead. I leaned against the door, showing no intention of opening it. There was a thud outside the door. Hank seemed to have sat down leaning against the door. He slowly said, I don't like Summer. Never have. She just likes me wholeheartedly. I seem to have never been paid so much attention to. Even you, I didn't you. Renee. I wasn't even sure if you liked me. I just wanted you to yield to me a bit. Not be so arrogant. When Summer said she wanted to make a bet with me, I agreed right away because I like you and I wanted to be with you. So I confessed. When you agreed, I was really happy. But later Summer told me that you weren't sincere at all. That you just didn't want to reject me in front of so many people. That you didn't really like me. She said she could prove that you didn't rely on me. Actually, I don't care if you pushed Summer or not. Even if you really did, it doesn't matter. With me protecting you, what could anyone do to you? But you just wouldn't yield. Renee. Why are you so stubborn? I actually heard a sense of doting and helplessness in his words. Which made me sick. I didn't even know why he thought love was such a selfish and narrow-minded thing. Full of his calculations for me to submit to him. I secretly turned on the recording. So, you know Summer wasn't pushed down by me. Right? Yeah. Hank's voice was steady. I asked her. Summer said she would never lie to me. She was willing to get hurt herself just to help me see your true feelings. Damn it. Since you knew, you still instigated the classmates to bully me. Not caring whether I wanted it or not. No, I just wanted you to beg me. As long as you begged me, I would protect you. Why wouldn't you? Although it was disgusting, I forced myself to keep him incriminating himself. That is to say, all the bullying, slander, and beating I suffered were masterminded by you and Summer. With the aim of making me submit to you. Right? Yeah. What about those classmates who colluded with you? Did they know too? No, they're just a bunch of idiots. They believe whatever they hear. They believe whatever I say. That was enough. I turned off the recording. Hank. Get lost. I've recorded what you just said. I'll take it to the police. Just wait to face legal sanctions with Summer. Renee. If this can make you happy and forgive me, I'm willing to cooperate with you. Idiot. He couldn't possibly think this would make him look affectionate. After submitting the evidence to Leo, I had a good sleep for once. When I woke up in the morning, I saw a message from Leo saying that the case could be filed. I felt a sigh of relief. I skipped the morning self-study, bribed the senior sister in the broadcasting room, and took over her broadcasting task. I gracefully played Hank's recording from last night into the microphone. Almost immediately, Edding fulfilled my sigh. The teacher rushed up and kept pleading with me outside the door to stop. The door of the broadcasting room was pounded loudly. But I remained unmoved. After the Class V incident, I went to her. She said the class monitor had already told her about it. That it wasn't intentional. That the Class V was just forgotten and dropped in the trash can. Since it was found, it should be left at that. After the Summer incident, I went to her. She said there was no evidence to prove I didn't push her. So it might as well be let go. The parents didn't pursue it. And making a big deal out of it wouldn't be good for me. When I was being bullied, she also said, forget it. It was just a bit of horseplay among classmates. Not a big deal. I should just endure it. Since that's the case, I'm sure she'll understand if I say, forget it, to her about what's happening today. I was really looking forward to seeing what those classmates would feel like when they heard the so-called truth. They believed in collapse and realized that they were seen as unreasonable idiots in others' eyes. I played the recording 3 times in a row. It was not until the principal came that I gracefully opened the door. You at out a sigh. Renee. You. The head teacher's finger was almost poking at my face. Looking panicked, I shrugged inferiorly. Teacher. I didn't do it on purpose. How about just forgetting it? The principal looked at me seriously and said, Classmate. I didn't know about these things before. Now that I know, I will definitely give you an explanation. Don't worry. You're in your senior year of high school, the crucial time for studying. I hope these things won't affect you. They won't, I said with a light smile. These will only be my motivation to move forward. Also, my legs are not convenient. I applied to study in the school dormitory. It's a bit difficult for me to come to class. I believe the school won't refuse this request. The principal sent a junior to help me move my things. I was still in a wheelchair as I entered the classroom. The table in front of Hank was full of garbage. His clothes were torn, and his head and face were either dirty or had wounds. The whole classroom was silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on me. Hank moved his lips silently, as if saying, Are you satisfied? How could I be satisfied? Their suffering had just begun. The police took Hank and Summer away. It was said that they confessed without much intimidation. Although their crimes were not serious, I refused to reconcile. This was bound to leave a mark on their records. After the incident, both Hank's and Summer's parents came to me, hoping to get me to write a letter of understanding in exchange for money. My parents naturally agreed, but I didn't. Fortunately, having fulfilled my obsè, I was an adult. Leo, Ennis, representing the police, insisted that only my signature would be valid. No matter what my parents said, I wouldn't budge. They had no choice but to leave. Muttering curses, I moved into the school dormitory. Every day, someone helped me get food and carry water. In fact, my injuries healed soon. After all, Hank didn't really go all out to hurt me. The classroom was much quieter. There were empty seats. Those who had bullied me along with Hank were all given demerits after being exposed by Hank. It wasn't enough for them to come to me crying and apologizing. They were also forced to read self-criticism in front of the whole school. Summer and Hank were both expelled from school during their 15-day detention. I couldn't be more satisfied with this result. Hank sent me messages, but I blocked him without hesitation. Summer, on the other hand, crazily cursed and insulted me. I took screenshots and handed them to the police. Before long, she sent an apology letter. I was so happy. It seemed that the sky had cleared. After Hank and Summer were released, they returned to school during the final sprint. Both of them didn't look well. Summer kept her head down, avoiding people and seemed afraid of being touched. Hank didn't seem to have changed much. He still held his head high. The head teacher stood on the podium, looking at them with a complicated expression. I've been transferred. I'll leave after your college entrance examination. I'm not a qualified teacher. During my tenure, I always adhered to the idea of harmony, unity, and learning first, thus turning a blind eye to what happened to classmate Renee. This is my dereliction of duty as a teacher. I hope that students can learn a lesson. What we can learn in school is not only knowledge but also the justice of being a person and the ability to distinguish right from wrong. I know that many of us blindly worshipped, lost our judgment, and made mistakes. Classmate Renee's experience has reminded us that people should not follow blindly. This lesson is harsh. I can't say it's worth it. But I hope that those who have made mistakes can have the courage to take responsibility for their actions. We should all apologize to classmate Renee. After saying that, the teacher bowed to me on the podium. Then, let out a low sigh. One by one, classmates stood up, lowered their heads, and shamefully confessed their mistakes and apologized to me. As the person involved, I didn't really feel much about all this. The harm had been done. I didn't want the scar to disappear just because of a simple admission of mistakes. I wanted them to be tormented by their guilt forever. I don't want to forgive, I said infuriately, sitting in my seat. Teacher, I'm touched by your actions, but I don't want to forgive. Is that okay? The head teacher was stunned for a moment, then forced a smile. Of course. Apologizing is what we should do, but the right to forgive lies with you. We won't force you. That's good. The head teacher's eyes turned to Hank and Summer. Of course. The main instigators still don't seem to show any signs of repentance. Perhaps because of this. As soon as class was over, I saw the classmate sitting behind Summer kick her chair. Summer let out a scream and fell to the ground. The classmate shrugged infuriately. Sorry. My foot slipped. Summer bit her lip and stood up, not daring to say a word. She silently picked up the chair and sat down. But as soon as she sat down, the classmate behind her kicked again. She could only helplessly repeat the above actions. I didn't want to see this scene, so I got up and walked out of the classroom to the rooftop to get some air. There were footsteps behind me. I turned around and stood a little further away from the rooftop. Hank stopped, gave a bitter smile, and said, Renee, do you think I'll hurt you? Otherwise. I raised an eyebrow. You've lost your status. From a proud son of heaven to a person hated by everyone. Don't you want to kill me? He sighed. I realize now that I was terribly wrong. I actually thought that being relied on could prove that you loved me. I couldn't help laughing. Hank, are you still a primary school student? Dreaming of being the king of the world? Expecting women to rely on you? Treating you as the sky and the earth? To show off your heroism? Who on earth gave you that illusion? Hank froze in place. And suddenly a bitter smile appeared on his face. Yeah. I don't know either. Probably since I was a kid. My grandma told me that women should rely on men and serve them. I was born to enjoy life. Look at my parents. My mom can't do much and depends on my dad. Similarly, she takes good care of both me and my dad, and they don't have any conflicts. So I thought, maybe this is what love looks like. I was wrong. He looked at me with a hint of pity. Renee, can you forgive me? I took a step back and pointed to my face. Do you see the words idiot written on my face? Suddenly, a gust of wind came from behind. Hank's pupils suddenly dilated, and he shouted and rushed towards me. I turned around and just saw Summer with a ferocious expression, holding a knife and charging at me. I blocked with my arm, and the knife stabbed into my arm. Taking advantage of this resistance, I kicked her in the body. After being kicked in the classroom before, I learned a few self-defense moves from Leo. I usually work out too. I will never put my safety in the hands of others again. After all, one must always be on guard against others. See, it came in handy, didn't it? Summer was kicked to the ground by me. Her hair was in a mess. Her eyes were blood red, and she kept cursing at me. Looking at the wound on my arm, I thought, surely this can't be a minor injury this time. Hank stepped forward and kicked her in the chest. Summer. What are you crazy about? Summer, who had been cursing me, suddenly looked at Hank and started giggling. Hank. Why are you treating me like this? Why are you protecting this bitch? Don't you know that without her, we wouldn't be in this situation? Clearly, I'm the one who loves you the most in this world. Clearly, having fulfilled my sigh. I am. Hank was so frightened by her crazy look that he took 2 steps back, frowning. Summer. Don't you think you've done something wrong even now? What did I do wrong? She shouted. Tell me. What did I do wrong? Suddenly, she seemed to be choked. Her eyes bulged, and she made a gurgling sound in her throat. She curled up into a ball, covering her chest and trembling non-stop. Hank was stunned. I quickly took out my phone and called 120. Then rushed up to turn her over and kept doing first aid. Summer stared at me blankly. Her once bright eyes gradually lost their luster. Finally, having fulfilled my sigh, I saw a tear slowly falling from the corner of her eye. Summer died. At the police station, Hank confessed to everything. His life was ruined. I was getting my wound dressed at the hospital. Leo looked at me and sighed. Kids these days. Why are they all so crazy? To be honest, I didn't expect Summer to be so desperate either. Summer's parents are almost going crazy. They're at the police station, pulling Hank and demanding his life. Of course. Not every kid is like me. Growing up neglected. There's a girl in our team. Her family is on a business trip. Why don't you go and live with her? Huh? It's not a good idea to always live at school. Leo rubbed his nose. You still need to focus on preparing for the college entrance examination. But I don't have money. It doesn't matter. Leo coughed lightly. I mean, Ramin? She doesn't mind. Okay then. I didn't dwell on it too much. Compared with various concerns, it's better to accept kindness as soon as possible. As for the favor, I can pay it back later. Come to think of it. In this world, how many favors can be clearly accounted for? Hank was already an adult. Summer's death was ultimately due to sudden myocardial infarction, and the trigger was the kick Hank gave her in the chest. As for the stab on my arm, the Leo's family compensated me 80 yuan, and this matter was considered over. There's no point in pursuing it further. When a person dies, it's like a lamp going out. All the past has gone with the wind. Until the day before the exam. My parents never asked about me once. That's okay. At least they won't have their eyes on the compensation money. The college entrance examination ended in the calm and sultry weather. On the night after the exam, Leo invited Luna and me to dinner. Drunk, like her. He held a wine bottle with hazy eyes and hiccuped. Renee. You must study hard. Don't be like my sister. Luna quietly leaned close to my ear. His sister was bullied on campus before the college entrance examination and couldn't take it anymore. So she committed suicide. So that's why since he met me again, he gave me so much help. Maybe after I successfully got through all this, it was as if he had saved his sister. Leo, everything will pass. I gently clinked glasses with him. The past is dark and irrecoverable. But the road ahead is bright and promising.